As an adult, don't we all miss spring break? Nothing like taking a week off from all your responsibilities. Well, here's the next best thing for adults, a spring break from house payments. SaveWithConrad.com can help you get rid of all your credit card debt just like that. We're routinely helping our listeners save $5, $6, $7, even $800 a month. And you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this, but check this out, no house payments for 2 months. At SaveWithConrad.com, NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.
Deletion! My skin's dying because you're under it. I'm done lying to myself for this. For all the wonder and believing, man, it's making me weak. I'll fade away and classify myself as obsolete.
Words are about to be spoken on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you by the ad-free shows and podcasting networks. I'm John Alba. That's the broken one, woken one, the spoken one himself, Mr. Matt Hardy. What's going on, man?
Here hanging out at the Hardy compound, you know, another beautiful day here. Anytime we are able to communicate via this platform, it's a good day. It's a positive. So yeah, man, everything's good here on my corner of the world. How about you?
Yeah, things are all right. Things are all right. We had beautiful weather up in Jersey for a few days, and then today it just decided to be cold as shit. Because why not?
The bottom dropped out of it?
Dude, totally. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't know why. I still don't feel like I've totally even fully recovered from WrestleMania week, honestly. I still feel a little stuffy. So the weather changes. It's not what you want. It's not what you want, but it's all good, man. I know everyone does want a brand spanking new episode of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, and that's what Matt and I are here to deliver to your ears.
Yes, sir.
Wherever you may be listening to this. Oh man, just so much going around in the space. I loved our episode last week, recapping WrestleMania 40 and talking about some of the happenings there. You enjoying this little free agency stretch you got going on here, Matt? Everyone's talking about you this week.
Incredibly enjoying it. I'm having a great time, and it's like this might spoil me a little bit, you know. Like I'm in no huge rush to sign anything to be an official employee. I'm digging what I'm doing. Had a couple signings these last couple weeks. WrestleCon was off the chart with me and Jeff, and I think most people know that. It was insane. And this last week I had Astronomicon, which was in Detroit. I did Saturday and Sunday there. It was crazy as well. And thank you to everyone who came out in Astronomicon. It was insane on Saturday, and both days were really, really good. And it was great hooking up, meeting so many people that are big Hardy supporters. Yeah, man, I'm enjoying this, and just being home, not having the stress of going to the airport, catching that early flight, whatever. It's been really nice. So yeah. I think you'll see in my Mad Fact. I'm in no rush to leave the Hardy compound.
Okay. I got, and I'm not exaggerating, I got at least 5 texts last night. It's Wednesday as we tape this. I got at least 5 texts last night while I was at SNY, and I had 3 people at SNY come up to me and said, "Oh, so Matt showing up on WWE TV. I saw the teases on social media. You had the internet buzzing, man. Any comment you'd like to add as we've been seeing some of these vignettes and little spookery teasing potential re-debut of Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy here?"
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure. I am doing what I should be doing as a free agent, creating hype around myself. Yes, I have been speaking with AEW constantly. I have been speaking with WB. I've been speaking with several people across several different platforms. So I think the next couple of weeks are going to be fun. The next few weeks are going to be fun. As I said before, I think we're getting to the point where we're going to be doing some pretty cool stuff coming up. So yeah, I am doing what I should be doing. And my job as a brand, which I have to look at myself as a brand, a lot of my social media stuff is Matt Hardy brand. My job as a brand is to promote myself and to create buzz around myself. And I feel like I do a pretty decent job with it whenever I am just able to kind of freelance and do whatever.
What do you think about this whole reboot of the Wyatt family of sorts that's being teased here? There was a report this week that indicated that Eric Rowan could be on his way back to WWE to be a part of that. There were reports months back before Bray passed that Eric Young was going to be involved with it. Alexa Bliss was going to be involved with it. What are your thoughts on continuing that Bray Wyatt legacy?
I feel like Wyndham could have turned the White Six into something very special. Very creative guy, very passionate, especially working with Triple H. I feel like he has a better understanding of stuff that is kind of out of the ordinary, you know, out of the box, out of the normal parameters in pro wrestling. But just now considering, you know, Bray's awful and terrible passing, I feel like in memory of Bray, the Wyatt Six has a chance to do really good. And I think having people in it involved in it that were close to him, that are really motivated to, you know, carry on his legacy, really motivated to honor him, you know, pay homage to him as time goes forward. I feel like it can be very successful, especially if it is done in the right way.
Would that be appealing to you?
Yeah. I mean, anytime I have the opportunity to do Broken Matt Hardy, that's appealing to me. I'm much more open and willing, I think, to do Broken Matt Hardy than to do regular Matt Hardy at this stage of the game. Why? You may ask. Broken Matt Hardy is much more entertainment driven. Matt Hardy can still go out and he can still have good matches. You know, but to really go out there and like kick ass and be extreme in the late 90s and early 2000s, whatever, that is much more challenging for me. I feel like it is more beneficial to me to work much smarter as opposed to trying to work harder. And then also work in a way that I integrate a lot of entertainment into whatever I'm doing. So yes, anytime a Broken Matt opportunity lies there for me, I'm always here for it.
Here's my one concern with this Wyatt Six or whatever it's going to end up being.
Mm-hmm.
Bray Wyndham, there was just so much magic in a bottle, right? Like
Yep.
he was just so unbelievably talented and forward thinking and creative. And that's not to say that Taylor, Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy, whatever you want to call him, isn't. I don't want to see someone trying to be Bray Wyatt because there's only going to be one Bray Wyatt.
Yeah,
You know,
and
so
you're right, John. They can't. They can't try and emulate Bray, you know, and do the exact same things they would have to do. They would have to utilize his style and his creativity and walk down that avenue, but do it in their own words. You know,
Yeah.
they have to paint their own pictures.
I think a stable that is built around the idea of doing right by Bray as this
Yes.
folklore, larger than life character, almost this godlike character, where the mission of the stable is to do right by him and fulfill him. I think
Right.
there's definitely legwork there to roll with, but if it's just doing the same spooky vignettes or cryptic speaking, I think that might not necessarily achieve the same level of success that we're accustomed to. So it's a very precarious situation they find in doing so. I don't think we've ever seen a situation like this before, Matt, where you've had this emulation idea, but also not treading on the exact same territory that this future Hall of Famer laid the groundwork for.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things I suggested is for my say you have Broken Matt as part of the Wyatt Six, right? If Vanguard 1 shows up and a hologram pops out from here on out, the hologram, we can do an AI, it's Bray Wyatt. And he is the one that is the mind of the group, and he is leading the group. He is
Wow.
the beacon of light that carries things on. I think that's something that's very important. And I think that would help make this a success as well.
Yeah, I think I don't know about AI, but I feel like the idea of making Bray the purpose, making Bray the why behind whatever this is, that could lead to this being very successful. So, and I mean,
I do too.
I don't feel like anyone really talks enough about Taylor, Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy, whatever you want to call him. He's a really good performer in his own right, isn't he?
He is. I mean, I actually went back and watched some of his NXT stuff a few years back, right?
The
And
Bo
he was
Leave
doing great
stuff.
Dude. I loved Bo Leave. There's a fan. I'm sure if he'll probably hear this or somebody will buzz him on this podcast. And I remember he would just say Bo leave to me over and over and over. He was a big, obviously, Bo Dallas fan, big Bray Wyatt fan, big Broken Matt fan. But Bo leave was this thing. Anytime I'd see him like an appearance or signs, he'd say, Bo leave, just over and over. And that was like our little thing whenever we'd interact. But yeah, I loved the Bo Dallas, Bo leave stuff.
What makes Taylor a good performer?
He's a great athlete to begin with. That goes without saying. He's a really great top athlete. I think he's a very, very unique guy, man. Much like Bray is, and it's wild because I feel like when you talk about myself and Jeff, there's a very crystal clear difference that Jeff is the guy he really is a charismatic enigma. That is a great description of him. And then I am more of the architect who thinks very logically and the way I think it is very lineal, very lineal, thinking like advance a story, this. Jeff is just looking for the big spot to like steal the show or steal the match, right? And then we incorporate that in there. One of the things that always struck me strange about Bray and Bo, or Taylor and Wyndham, is that they're both like these unique enigmas. They're both unpredictable. And it's not like they're the same. They're different, but they are both very unpredictable people. They are both enigmatic. They are both people who like might say something. You're like, what the hell? And then you think about it for a second, like, hold up, that could actually be really, really smart. They're both very unique in that capacity. In my opinion, my interactions with them.
I'm really interested to see whenever that debuts what this new WWE production team does with that presentation, because we've seen a lot of different presentations so far, even in just entrances and camera shots. Everyone was talking about the Sami Zayn entrance from this past week that he had with Chad Gable in Montreal, where he started the entrance with your boy Jey Uso outside the arena, and then leading that all the way through the arena concourse down to the floor level as one continuous tracking shot. There's a lot of possibilities that come up with something like that. And it's always fun. I know you really enjoy getting in the weeds of this stuff. Like when you get that fresh coat of paint on a product, it really does make it feel new, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And I am curious. I mean, it could change so many things about the presentation of the storytelling, from a more cinematic aspect with these characters. And I think with the Wyatt Six, I think you can have the common bond of everyone, their love for Wyndham, right? And that's kind of like what everyone's motivation it is to continue his legacy, to let it live on in WWE. But then I think you've got to be put in scenarios where you don't have to take yourself too serious in the things you're doing, because it is a scenario where it's hard to take that too serious when it is so over the top. And
Sure.
I think we have to remember that it is an entertainment thing at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to see how it is presented and how they go about working to promote Bray Wyatt's legacy.
This week on the Extreme Life, we're going to be talking about the state of AEW, Matt. Something that we did a state of WWE episode a few months back. So we're going to do a state of AEW episode, because everywhere I look in the discourse, I mean, it has just been so controversial. It's been so controversial what AEW has been doing in the last few months. There's a lot of people who are behind it. There's a lot of vocal people who are not. And the idea of this episode is not to platform those crazy tribalistic voices, but instead try to break things down very clearly and get some perspective from someone who was in AEW for much of the last 4 years, and now you could be going back to AEW, you might not be, and we'll try to really break down the direction of it. One thing about Tony Khan is that he's unapologetically himself every single time he speaks. So we'll get some insight from you on that as we discuss further here on the Extreme Life. I did want to ask you about this real quick. A couple big injuries in the wrestling world this week. Matt Cardona suffering an injury that's going to put him on the shelf. Rhea Ripley coming off that great WrestleMania match with Becky Lynch. She suffers a shoulder injury. She had to relinquish her championship. What type of advice, as the veteran Matt Hardy, do you have to offer to people who suffer injuries while they're at the top of their game?
That sucks for Matt Cardona. I hate that for Matt. I'd actually just heard this a day or so ago that he had been hurt. I don't know. Just get yourself fixed up. Don't rush yourself back. Make sure you come back 100%. And the time you have off, because he's been busting his ass. He's been grinding away. I mean, just enjoy the time that you have off and try not to overly question yourself. Am I going to be as good as I was? Am I missing so much time that I'm going to lose my spot or I'm going to lose my buzz, whatever? Just take care of yourself first and foremost. You have to make yourself the priority. Do that. That's my advice to Matt Cardona. And I think he's at this stage of the game where he that's kind of what he's going to do anyway.
Well, and like with Rhea though, like Rhea is someone who is very much. I mean, she just had a major match at WrestleMania. She's had this year-long title reign, and I feel like, and you could probably speak to this because you've been in that position where when you're so ingrained in the system, you almost worry if you step aside for too long, someone might take that spot.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and I'm sure that, I mean, that's a reality, when you're in the WWE system. And the thing that sucks about it is that, she's had all these killer matches and she's busted her ass. She's been killing it day in, day out. And then she gets hurt like on this, it's basically like a vignette, right? A backstage attack. The thing with Liv Morgan is where they claim she got hurt. I don't know. She could have got hurt in the match, whatever, but it does suck, especially if it happens in that kind of capacity. But it is one of those things. I think she is good and secure. She can go get fixed, whatever she needs to get fixed. She can heal up, and she's going to come back, and that spot is going to be sitting there waiting for her because she has demanded so much attention. She has commanded that TV time in that spot, and it'll be there waiting on her whenever she comes back, and she's 100%.
What do you think people connect with her? Because I feel like her current presentation, it would have vibed in pretty much any era of WWE, especially from the 90s to today.
Yeah. I mean, she really hit the pulse of society, I think, with just her whole look. She has like that darker goth look. Here, my family, they play into that a little bit. It's kind of hot right now. People they dig it, they're into it. And she just has that thing about her, like her demeanor, and we talked about this before. She just has that it, that you really can't teach someone, that it factor where you just see her and she seems like a star. You're drawn to her. You automatically, as soon as she comes on the screen and you see her in the way she acts, the way she performs, the way she moves, the way she does facial expressions, she commands your attention. And I think that's just that trait. You just can't really teach it. It's just something some people have.
It really was reminiscent to me of the China Eddie Guerrero dynamic too, with her and Dom.
Yeah.
And I think that portraying someone as a strong woman who has that mental dominance over a guy like Dom really elevated her to that next level, and fans really dug their dynamics. So
Yeah,
that
and you can't really delve into this statement and what makes her special without putting over Dom too, because Dom plays his role to a T. I mean, he is so good at what he does. He's the little sneaky little shit-eating heel, who like goes out and he knows when to like back off. He knows when to hi Barty. I see you're just standing there looking at me. All right, go buddy. Since you're not dressed, go eat your food.
Barty Hardy's acting a little like Dominic Dirty Dom right now, trying to be
He is
sneaky
acting
here.
like Dirty Dom. He like snuck in. He was like staring at me, going. But yeah, man, Dom knows when to like pull back and beg off and be that cowardly heel, and that's so important if you're slotted in that role. So he's very good at it. On top of that, he's turned into a really, really solid pro wrestler the last few years that he's been, getting this opportunity on WWE TV.
For sure. Good ups for the Judgment Day there. I totally agree with you entirely. Last question I got for you before we get into our main topic.
Mhm.
We did see some new tag titles on WWE TV this past week, and it got an interesting reaction. I feel like most people were into them. What'd you think of the design? And what was your favorite design of tag titles that you and Jeff have ever held?
I like the new design better than the penny belts, as people had called them, or whatever, the
Oh,
red and
they're
blue
brutal.
SmackDown titles.
Brutal.
So it is what it is. I would consider that an upgrade. When it comes to talking about versions, version 1 would consider that an upgrade. My favorite version of the title that I won was the very first title that we won. Whenever we won the titles back in '99, because those were the classics. We saw the Hart Foundation, Demolition, the Road Warriors. All of those teams held that same title. So just holding that title, because it had so much great history, that particular version of the tag title, that World Tag Team title, was my favorite one.
That was the classic WWF Tag Team
Yes,
Championship.
yes,
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I definitely associate that with that era. I'll tell you, I didn't hate the world tag titles that you and Jeff had, like 06, 07. I didn't
yeah.
hate
No,
those designs either.
they were nice too. That would have been my second. That'd been my
Yeah,
second pick if I had to ask my favorites.
it's kind of refreshing, isn't it, to see some of these more classic designs starting to get back integrated into the fold here in WWE. Like they
It,
got
it
so outlandish for so long, and now it feels like there's a little more of a classic vibe coming.
Yeah, no, it is. And I guess I get why they were doing the red and blue titles. They were really trying to brand and promote the, specifically the Raw brand, the SmackDown brand, and they have done a good job of that over the years. But I think it's one of those things where it's much better if you have like a more classy, a much more, just a title that seems very valid, that seems like it
Yeah,
has equity, that looks like a cool trophy that everybody would want to win. I feel like that means more than having something that you're using to try and push as a branding point for your promotion.
I know old school Matt Hizzle would have loved that little spinner belt that Dana had though back in the day. I know you would have had some fun with it,
Yeah, no, I would have for sure.
wrapping in the back of the bus, throwing it
You're the
down.
back of the bus rapping, man. When
Good
you're in the
stuff.
back of the bus rapping, you always have your go-to words. When you're about to run out, you're like, "Oh shit, I better go to my go-to words."
What was your go-to?
I mean, always it really depends. There'd be stuff where, like land, hand, just something with the A&D. There's stuff that you could go that was very simplistic. And sometimes in your head, if you're thinking and you're like spitting bars, maybe you have like a big word and you think for a couple bars while you're still trying to spit to find something that can rhyme with it. But just the more simple stuff, the 4-letter words that have a lot of things they rhyme with, those were like my go-to words, I'd say.
Okay. You and Xena back there. I get it, man.
You know,
Well, maybe one day we'll get him on and we'll be able to reminisce on those fun stuff, man. All right, we're going to talk about the state of
you.
we're going to talk about the state of AEW on this week's podcast, but before we can, you know what I got to ask? Please, Matt, hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact, Matt is in no rush to sign a contract.
Huh. No rush at all.
No rush.
Why is that?
I'm enjoying this freedom, man. I'm just enjoying this. It's nice to. I mean, because I've been under contract now for 7 years, 3 with the WWE, 4 with the AEW, just to kind of take a little break, take a little time away where you can't get a call and you would have to come in. It's just nice to have this small period, and I'm very blessed to be pretty set with how I am. So I'm in no rush to do it. I'm just kind of enjoying this time. I'm doing some appearances that are still going well. And, it's just all good, man. Life is easy. And I just want to continue to promote myself, get some buzz, continue to try and be creative, talk to these people about ideas and what I would like, depending on where I would go. And then, make the right choice, make the right decision when the time is right.
So does that dissuade you from the idea of signing a contract potentially?
No, it doesn't, because
Okay.
once I do choose a team, I want to go all in. I mean, I feel like one of the most beneficial parts about having Matt Hardy work for your company, and this is even if you're, if I'm not under a contract to you, if I'm just doing a shot or whatever, is like I'm gonna wave your flag, and I'm gonna promote your show. From the very first day I was at AEW, they never had to ask me to promote shows. Sometimes, later on they'd say, "Oh, please make sure to promote the show, the Dynamite or the Rainbow." I mean, I always did, because like if you're taking care of me and you're paying my bills and you're paying my paycheck, my job is to wave the flag of that company, whether it is AEW, whether it's WWE, whether it was TNA, whatever it was, Ring of Honor, wherever I was working. And that's what I did. And every time you look back in the times that I worked for a promotion, I did all that I could do to wave that flag and try and put more eyeballs on that product. That was always my goal.
Matt, we are just hours away from AEW Dynasty in St. Louis. Swerve, your boy, potentially walking out AEW World Champion. You got to think that's an event you want to be there in person for, right?
Indeed. Swerve winning the AEW World Heavyweight title is something that I would certainly use Game Time to get tickets for.
And whether it's AEW Dynasty or a comedy event or a theater show or a ball game, whatever it may be, Game Time is your place to go, because you shouldn't have to worry to buy tickets to your next big event at the last minute. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy those tickets for those events, with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. It is so frustrating right now, Matt Hardy. I feel like it has been everywhere in the news cycle about ticket monopolies and everyone trying to control how much you pay and outpricing the artist, outpricing the fan. You don't got to worry about any of that with Game Time. Am I right?
No, you don't, because Game Time is the way to go. When you are purchasing tickets via Game Time, it's a one and done. You're going to know paying. There's not going to be any hidden fees. They are straightforward, and they are they are my most favorite ticket distributor ever.
We talk about transparency here on the Extreme Life. Matt
do.
says you won't see any fees because of the all-in pricing. You toggle on this feature. It shows the total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkouts. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And with the lowest price guarantee, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets elsewhere. Game Time's ticket coverage allows your purchase to be covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code HARDY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code HARDY, HARDY, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What appealed most to you about AEW when it launched back in 2019?
The most appealing thing to AEW was the schedule, in all honesty, because it just started as Dynamite, doing a Wednesday where you would leave Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, whatever it may be, come back home Thursday morning. And then 4 times a year, they have a pay-per-view week where, usually you're on for 3, 4, 5 days. Just being on that schedule, allowing me to be at home with all my kids, still being paid well. I made really good money when I, was under contract with AEW. So those things were very appealing. And like just being there with the Young Bucks, which once again, whether you love them or whether you love the Young Bucks or you hate the Young Bucks, I don't really give a shit. They're 2 of my best friends. So just able to be with them and hang out with them, that was always very enjoyable. So yeah, those are the driving forces that motivated me to sign with AEW in the beginning.
It really felt like the nucleus of AEW when it launched was almost counterculture within wrestling.
It
And
was.
we've talked in the past about how like ECW was counterculture, and that was really what allowed it to catch on. And while I don't think AEW was counterculture in that traditional sense, it was counterculture to the establishment in wrestling at the time, which was, of course, Vince McMahon's WWE.
Right.
And you see that fever in the first year, or not even year because it was the pandemic, but the first 3-4 months of AEW, from Double or Nothing to when they finally get Dynamite off the ground, those crowds are just so rabid because they're so hungry and thirsty for something different. How, as a performer, did that form an appeal for you and for some of your peers to see that type of culture and environment?
I mean, it was very motivating, and it was also something that I think drew a ton of attention right from the jump because they were very much like a rebel group. When you say counterculture, they were because they were doing things differently. They were doing things in their own fashion. And I remember that first episode coming out of Dynamite, and I remember my wife was just like, it's a company, whatever they're around, they're going to do. I said, no, this is going to be a big deal. And I think I want to say I followed very closely one of the early pay-per-views, and my wife said, oh, what is this? Probably just like a one shot or one and done, whatever. And you could see that there was a lot of thought behind the whole procedure, behind the whole show from top to bottom, and the guys busted their ass, and it almost felt like they're doing things they might not allow currently in the WWE, which made it even seem like more of a rebel show. And I remember that first TV show, I said, oh, they're getting TV, and she said, oh, you think it's gonna be a big deal, whatever. I said, I don't know, we'll see. I think it's gonna do well though. And I remember that first number that the first AEW Dynamite did, it did 1.4 million, something along those
Yeah.
lines, going against NXT, and the old famous line that NXT put out afterwards. I want to say they said like, this is this is a wrestling is not a sprint, it's a marathon or whatever, and did they even congratulate them on the show?
Yeah, I think they did. I'd have to go back and find the statement, but
Yeah,
it was very unusual because I
it was
remember
very
getting I
it was
remember
very
getting that.
unlike WWE.
Yeah, I remember. So they went into that knowing they were going to get beat,
Yeah,
and that was like a huge admission of defeat at the time. And that press release was almost them just kind of trying to quell it. I feel like
right.
it's very
I
bizarre.
I remember thinking it was very unlike WWE to do that on any capacity, but it was cool because it did show that like AEW has the ability to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, the first few months of AW were creatively colorful, I'll say. It was definitely interesting. The structure at the top, you mentioned the Bucks, but you had Cody in the creative hands, you had Kenny Omega in the creative hands, and
Right.
it didn't really feel like there was this super linear vision of where the product was going to go. You saw the seeds of potential for so many different things, and then beginning of 2020 rolls around, they do the creative change that's been documented. Tony Khan started to take more of the reins of creative, and headed into the pandemic. AW was producing some really strong television. Did you know that was going to be your destination from the get go?
Um, no, I mean, once again, I met with Vince, and I talked to him kind of about my desires, what I would like to try and do, what my goal was. Um, and I could tell Vince was kind of at that point where he was ready for me to try and be a producer. And not that I hate that. I took that as a great compliment. But I still wanted to wrestle. I had some time left to wrestle, and AW, I thought I was going to get that opportunity, and it seemed like it was going to be the best choice if you are wanting to wrestle for this next uh, period of your career, as opposed to like be put into a producer role. So they pitched some stuff towards the end, and I've talked about these ideas about doing some stuff with Wyndham and the Fiend, and like having me have a character with duality. Jeff has a character with duality, and we do something together. And they gave me that deal with Randy. It was going to be an angle that was going to go on through if I would have re-signed and stayed. But I just said, well, I'm gonna try something new, and it was very Matt Hardy-ish too. Like I feel like I am someone who is never afraid to be outside of Alexandria. I'm always going to be grateful for WWE. Without WWE, I wouldn't be here speaking to you right now. Without WWE, I wouldn't have this great life that I have. Without WWE, I wouldn't be a big star in wrestling. And I am very aware of that. And I am very grateful for that. And I will never lose sight of that fact. But with that same thought being said, I also know you can go outside of WWE and you can still do things where you might even get a better opportunity to try and promote yourself and move yourself or get buzz, whatever it may be. So yeah, I feel like whenever I was going to AEW, I just felt like that was going to be the best case scenario for me, both personally, professionally and financially at that time.
And that, not to jump ahead, but like that is at the end of the day here, the single most successful element of AEW in the first place is providing that other high quality avenue for people to get work and exposure.
Right.
It blows my mind when I see people want a company to fail. And it wasn't just AEW. Keep in mind, for years it was LOL TNA going out of business, right? Like that was always the meme
The
for a
worst.
while.
The
It
worst.
it blows my mind that people actively want to see a place fail because of what that does for the entire industry and giving people not just wrestlers but producers and production people and travel people, and I mean everyone. It gives them opportunities and jobs, and I think more than anything, Matt, that is the greatest offering that AEW has provided for the space.
It is. And it's just, it is paramount not to have a monopoly in pro wrestling. I mean, once again, you could see how once WWE got to that point where there was no one that was a threat to them, like how stagnant things became at WWE. And just the fact you have WWE as it is now, which is really, really good, but that doesn't happen if AEW doesn't come along and like make them step their asses up, and that's a simple, that's a mad fact. AEW is the place that pushed WWE to be better, and now they have really stepped things up, and they are better. They had to change things up. They had to evolve and adapt and move forward to not get somebody else showed up and they put them on their toes, which I dig, and that is going to be probably AEW's greatest and biggest contribution to pro wrestling, especially from the first few years.
Yeah, I mean, there were obviously other factors in play there with the whole what forced WWE to change, but I'll say this, it definitely, that those first couple years of AEW, early 2020 especially, like, I don't know, tell me if you agree or not. I feel like the peak of AEW in terms of creative product was early 2020 to like March 2022. Would you agree with that in terms of like just the creative juices and the fluidity of the program and the pulse that it had on the audience? I feel like that was the peak of it.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree with that.
Okay.
I feel like too, AEW really changed the game during the pandemic as well, right? Because WWE was doing the deal where they had people on the screens in the arena, whatever, but no people. Like Tony and Tony's folks, the people that was interacting with them had the idea to put guys that were extras that were in there for TV, or guys that were like not on the show, put them in the crowd and have some sort of human interaction. Because I say this all the time, like the pandemic era was the weirdest era I've ever competed in by far, because like pro
It's
wrestling,
the worst era of pro wrestling TV ever.
pro wrestling is not pro wrestling
Right.
without an audience. I mean, that's once again, nothing demonstrated it. Nothing proves that more than the whole pandemic era. When I can tell you out there working, especially my old ass and beat up by you, when you're out there taking bumps and there's no one cheering and booing, it's much harder to like take those bumps, and it sucks. But yeah, it just changed the whole feel of a pro wrestling match, because one of the biggest factors in a pro wrestling match is the fans' reaction to it, and the way they sing along, and the way they chant to a taunt, or the way they cheer or they boo, and they're like on this emotional ride of whatever the story someone is telling during a match, and they want to see their hero overcome, or they want to see the bad guy get their comeuppance, whatever it may be, and all that stuff was deleted from those matches during the pandemic, and it was the weirdest thing ever. You're out there, and it feels like you're performing theater in front of someone who didn't buy any tickets. It was just it was the weirdest, most strange period of my career by far.
So, what enabled AEW to succeed creatively during that time period? Because you and I both just agreed that even though this was the worst era for pro wrestling ever, this pandemic, AEW did thrive to a point where coming out of it, it got one new TV show and then eventually a second TV show. It expanded pay-per-views, and I think all of that points back to the quality of the product from 2020 through the beginning of 2022? What enabled the company to find success during that period? And take me in through the inner workings here, because you were there that whole time.
I mean, first and foremost, I think I'll never forget when we started in Jacksonville and, we were doing COVID testing every week. There was a huge unity within the locker room. And like everybody was playing for Team AEW, everybody was flying the flag. We had no idea how big of a risk are we truly taking, now that COVID is out, because it's been around a few weeks, right? And we don't know how serious to take this. Does it kill you? Do you get this and you're never the same, or what? So we had no idea. So that was scary, right? So we have everybody that is working together to still try and provide the greatest entertainment they can for a TV show. And there's a lot of wrestling fans that tell me, like, thank you guys so much for putting on shows during the pandemic era when everything else was shut down, because like they helped get me through so much. Like it was a little escape for me and reminded me, like, hold up, real life sucks right now. So thank you guys for doing that. So it was definitely a point. Oh, Barty's back. It was definitely a point. He's got on clothes, at least he's dressed. It was a point in time where there was such great unity, where it almost feels like, in some ways, I don't know, you were much younger, John, but 9/11 in US history was a time where like everybody came together as an American, like on the same page. And there was like this great pride and patriotism for country, right? I feel like there was this great pride and patriotism for AEW during that pandemic era, because we were all there trying to overcome these insane circumstances, which we were still frightened by. We really didn't know what was going to happen at the end of the day. And I think that's what led to the great unity. I also think that's what led to everybody working together so well. And I think the people who were, coming up creatively with ideas, and a lot of people were chipping in on their own stuff. I think everybody hit kind of like a creative hot point too, because everyone was so motivated to do what was best for AEW.
It really did feel like so much of it was firing on all cylinders in that sense. Because, I mean, you could see that synergy was there. Like, look what they were able to do with Brody Lee and take him from a guy who was presented not really much higher than a mid card guy in WWE to elevating him to a legit main event act in AEW in a very short period of time. Look at the story they told with Hangman Page and the Dark Order, which I just did a tape study of your match with Hangman not that long ago on Wrestling According to Alba.com. You can check that out too if you'd like to subscribe to that. But we did a breakdown of that, and that's a match that's just kind of in the middle of a pay-per-view, but from a storytelling standpoint and creatively, it hit like every single beat that you'd want it to. So you really do believe that it was the camaraderie within the locker room that fueled creative strategy at the time?
I mean, I think that's why things came off so good. I mean, creatively, as you said, Tony had, taken the reins, and he would kind of give everyone a broad aspect of what they were doing. And then people would start putting their own details on it. He would say, okay, here's the bone, put some meat on it. That's kind of like where we were, but just the camaraderie of everyone working together, everybody being on the same page, everyone wanting to fly the AEW flag, because we were all in this very strange period of like, we didn't know like really what is happening, day in and day out, but we were there all busting our ass, taking the chance to get to work, and doing everything that we could to entertain people and let them escape for 2 hours.
This all kind of plays into my thesis that I'll state momentarily here. But you just said something that was very interesting, and that was that Tony gave you an outline, and then you guys put in the individual story beats that contributed to the creative on that. So that's a pretty abnormal way of booking a territory per se. But it's do you credit that early success to that mentality with Tony? I really want some insight here on Tony's booking mentality then at this point in time during the height of AEW viewership and creative, if you understand what I'm saying here.
Yeah, I do. I think that was beneficial. And I think everybody knew what was going on in advance. And I think that changed as time went on. And I think if you're trying to tell a story, and you get the viewers of your product watching this story and they become involved in it, I think that's how you retain those viewers. And I think that's what's important. I was just sitting here and I'm going to bring this up too. So when I was with Private Party and they first turned heel, I was taking advantage of these guys, and then they kind of came to the dark side. They turned heel, and I started with the HFO when it was myself, Quinn, and Zay. That's when we were at our best, and we had a lot of momentum, and we were doing really good stuff there. And we added some people. Eventually, we added too many people to the whole HFO deal. But we did Butcher and Blade, and I was kind of like their mouthpiece, and because they were like two heavies. We still told this story and the whole thing with Darby, and I was very power hungry, right? As Big Money Matt, and I wanted to collect all the titles and collect all the money, whatever else. Like, we did a good little story between myself and Darby, and I had my group. Obviously, he had a couple friends that he could interact with as well, mainly being Sting. But the show where myself and Darby, the show we main evented in Daly's place, and I was just looking back again too. At that time, there was one Dynamite that did a bigger viewership, but it did 1.219 million viewers. And the main event, advertised main event, was Matt Hardy versus Darby. And, Private Party came out, Sting came out, Butcher and Blade came out, other people came out to help Darby. And then we followed all over the place. But once again, I still think we had done a really, really good job of like trying to build a story between Darby, a guy who I say is a sellout as the TNT champion. He's a ripoff of my brother, whatever he is, and now they need someone who actually is really known across the globe to be the face of the TNT network, and that being me. Even that, I'm very proud of that myself and Darby, we had that match, and it did that good number 2. We're also put in a very good position to succeed also. But I am very proud of that, and I thought we did a good job telling that story, getting there within those couple weeks. And to circle back around to what you're saying, I think we had more stuff like that in mind about where we wanted to go in telling stories. And I think if you know where you want to go in telling stories, and you're doing something each week to continue to build up the interest to this story in this eventual match, I think that is what makes for good TV.
Now, I want to say here on the front of viewership, because I think this does need to be said, is that comparing and contrasting viewership during the pandemic to today is a little difficult because a lot more people were home during the pandemic. More people didn't have as much to do during the pandemic and watching television. And cable has consistently fell since the pandemic as a result of it. So that is not totally apples to apples. I think for logistical clairvoyance, that needs to be said. But I understand what you're saying entirely on that front. So my thesis here, Matt, is that AEW expanded its programming for the first time in August of 2021, correct? With Rampage?
Yes.
Okay. We know that Collision would come about a year and a half later. There was more YouTube content being done with Dark and Dark Elevation. My thesis here is that AEW kind of cooled off a little bit in terms of the public interest and creatively, largely in part, and is not the sole reason, but largely in part due to the rapid expansion of television at a time when it didn't really need to creatively. Now, I understand if a network comes to you and says there's going to be more opportunities here to be able to potentially expand revenue and resources, obviously you're going to hop on that. But I really do believe that when the Brain Trust had to expand creative efforts in a very short period of time, not long, 2 years after launching the company in the first place, and only a year and a half or so after you launched your initial television show, that's where I feel the saturation started to seep in a little bit. And some of those consistencies in some of the storytelling that we heralded for so long maybe started to get lost a little bit. What do you think about that?
I can agree. I can agree with that. I do know, once they started Collision with this new deal they kind of agreed to, that is where Dark and Elevation stopped too, because like everything had to be on, WBD TV that they were going to be producing now was kind of the agreement, if I'm not mistaken. It was a lot, even I feel like the Rampage show, when it first started, they really went out of their way to promote Rampage like it was a major show. And I think that kind of that didn't happen as much going forward. And they made it seem like a secondary show, because I know there was like, whenever Punk showed up, and I think they on the very first show, if I'm not mistaken, they did the Kenny Omega
They did the
Christian
title
Cage war,
change.
right?
Yeah.
The title change, right? Um, I feel like as time went on, it just kind of Rampage became secondary, and it probably even became more secondary, or even a third thought after Collision started, right? But I feel like in the very beginning, everything was meant to be the absolute best for Rampage. They wanted to give like this explosive hour, nonstop, go, 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 go. And you can't argue with people for promoting another show if they're going to make more money, as it is what it is. But as far as you're saying, kind of stretching things thin for the brand, yes, I think that could be an issue.
Matt, if I were to ask you what is the most valuable thing in the world, what would you say?
I would say the Moai on Easter Island.
There's a very peculiar choice. Why would you say that?
Because I have never seen something more valuable, more magical, more amazing in my life. That ranks up as my number one moment.
Okay, like you see, for me, I'm obviously going food here. I'm talking about like a good dynamite roll or something like that. I love my Asian cuisine. That's fine. We have our own definition. But let me ask you this then: what is the second most valuable thing in the world?
Time.
I would agree with that because managing and worrying about body odor used to take up a lot of my time. I'm a TV guy, right? You're a TV guy. We're
Mm.
always paranoid about smelling, especially around midday. It's all extremely time consuming making sure you smell good, but not anymore. Since I switched to Mando whole body deodorant, I have freed up so much time. Now I can walk into the studio right before I go on air. That's why I don't have to worry at all about smelling up the joint. I can walk in. We go live at 11 o'clock. I could walk in there at 10:57 if I want to. It's that effective and that long lasting. Here's why. Mando doesn't cover up odor after the fact with heavy fragrances like certain other deodorants do. It stops odor at the source by blocking the bacteria on your skin from actually eating your sweat, which is the primary cause of BO in the first place. So what does this actually mean? It means Mando is clinically proven to control odor for up to 72 hours. That's 3 days, Matt Hardy.
That's a long time. And sometimes I need those 3 days after one of my intense workouts. When I hit that cardio hard for 30 minutes, burning 500 calories, thank God I have my Mando going.
Give yourself the precious gift of time. Get yourself some Mando whole body deodorant with our special offer here. New customers get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack with code HARDY at shopmando.com. You said you like it after your workouts. Are you someone that ends up being a little stanky after some of those workouts there?
Of course, man. When you do the work, you get a little stanky. But Mando, they take care of you. You will no longer have that stink. They are the way to go.
I don't know about you. Whenever I shower in the morning, I'm like one of those, like, I can't start my day until I shower. My day doesn't begin until I shower. I started using the cleansing bar. Love this thing.
Mm.
I for so long I used the liquid soaps and whatnot. This, you don't realize. I'm being real with this. You don't realize the natural odor that you carry around. You're so numb to it because it's just inherent to you. When I started using this, it was a total game changer for me, and it was especially a game changer, Matt Hardy, over during WrestleMania weekend. And I put this out as a little bit. I said, listen, I know there's going to be a lot of wrestling fans, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, whatever amount of wrestling fans in the area. Look what I got for you. And I presented them entirely with the Mando Care package that you can pick up right now, as I alluded to before. Get $5 off Mando's bestseller starter pack with code HARDY at shopmando.com. It gets a little stinky at some of those wrestling events, doesn't it?
Sometimes it does. Yeah, sometimes it does. And I got to tell you that bar is great. I have used that. And, I'm big on using a bar of soap over liquid soap. So I love the Mando bar.
Mando is seriously safe to use anywhere on your body. Pits, packages, belly buttons, cracks, crevices, stomach folds, feet, whatever you want to use it on, it's safe to use. is created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. So Mando whole body deodorant is powerful enough for the toughest body odor, but gentle enough to use everywhere, allowing you to put Mando on family jewels without any worries, because Mando is aluminum free, baking soda free, cruelty free, dye free, and it's vegan. It's clinically proven to control body odor better than a shower with soap alone. 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor level was a 5 out of 10. With Mando, ready for this? The average grundle odor is a 0 out of 10. That's a good grundle, Matt.
You can't compete with that low of a grundle. Jesus, that's great.
Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. Luckily, I got a discount code to help you get hooked on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get 5. That's how many, Matt?
5, 5, 5
Dollars.
off.
That's dollars, people. Off a starter pack with our exclusive code that equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code HARDY, HARDY, at shopmando.com, SHOPMANDO.com. We know Tony basically built AEW on the premise of having great matches. You know, it was so few and far between for a long period of time on WWE TV, where maybe if you watched a 3-hour Monday Night Raw, maybe you got one pretty good match. And the rest were time-stricken TV matches or 20-minute promo segments. So the idea of AEW becoming an alternative that offered great pro wrestling for pro wrestling fans that craved that almost feels like the foundation that the company was created on in the first place. With that comes, and with that, I should say, alongside an unlimited bankroll and payroll, comes the ability to bring in these names, bring in these wrestlers who may have been in WWE, may have been international stars, may have been on the indies, who are great pro wrestlers, and they are brought into the product. But a lot of them were brought in pretty quickly, and the roster expanded rapidly. What kind of effect, if any, did that have on the AEW product over the course of the past few years?
I mean, you definitely have people fighting for TV time.
Is that good or bad, though?
It can serve. It can be both. It can be both. It can be a positive because it motivates people to work harder. It motivates people to be more creative. It motivates people to, have better matches or think out of the box, whatever, just so that they stand out. And one of the things that can be tough is if you have someone that's signed and they're really driven, if they've done everything right and they've worked super hard, and they end up getting a lot of their TV time cut because someone else comes in that is a bigger star, whatever, it can be very frustrating to that individual too. So it's like a fine line you're walking, and I'm sure there has been plenty of that that's happened because the AEW roster is very big. And there's people that just want to get their opportunity to go out there and have TV time. And you obviously can't have everybody on TV when you have such a huge roster and such a limited amount of TV time.
Because one of the common criticisms, speaking from discourse that I've seen, is that you'll have someone introduced on TV, they'll bite into a story, and then they'll disappear for a period of time, or they might falter back. I mean, the biggest one I always use is Wardlow. I think Wardlow is like the prime example of this, where at the end of that period that we're talking about, spring 2022, Wardlow might have been the hottest wrestler on the AEW roster. People were ready for him to kick MJF's ass. And honestly, I think there would have been a large amount of the AEW fan base who would have been totally okay if MJF came in, and if Wardlow came in and won the AEW World Championship right then and there. And instead, he never quite gets over the hump. He disappears for a while, comes back, disappears again. And I feel like we've seen a lot of that start-stop on AEW TV over the course of the past year and a half. Maybe that's my incorrect disposition there, but what kind of effect, if any, does that type of presentation have in terms of how an audience consumes your product?
I mean, I would love to be able to book a guy like Wardlow. Because I mean, I've said that here on the show. I think he's a good looking dude who has got an incredible attitude, just a phenomenal attitude. I think he has the potential to be a huge star in AEW. I think he has the potential to be the champion. I think he has the potential to be the face of the brand. And I think you just have to follow through. If you have someone like this, you have to have a game plan and you have to stick to it. I mean, you can make changes. You need to take this side street here as opposed to doing this because the climate has changed in the audience eyes or whatever. But I think you really have to follow through with these people and see it to the end, because if you don't, the audience will cool off from them, or if they go away, they'll forget about them or whatever. And then you might lose that opportunity to make someone. When you have a talent that gets hot and you can tell like people want them right then and right there, sometimes you got to jump on that shit and capitalize on it. Even still looking back, I would have went with Swerve Strickland in that 3-way match at Sting's last match, just because that was such a big audience. I know it did a great number. There were so many people there. And I feel like if you were going to crown him as the world champion, that would have been the place to do it. That's just me. That's me speaking.
So you think Swerve has cooled off since then?
I don't know. I feel like since then, the company has cooled off. Has Swerve cooled off? I don't know. I feel like the company has cooled off a little bit.
So why do you think it's cooled off?
I would say I feel like there's a lot going on right now. I feel like you need 2 or 3 main things, and that's the focus of the shows. But there's a lot going on. I feel like there's been discourse. Once the Punk thing happened back at Brawl Out, that caused a lot of, that was very problematic for the company. Like, I wish that could have been nipped in the bud, stopped right there, and had never gone any further. And it's AEW is no longer, I mean, they're not in the honeymoon phase right now. That's kind of over.
Sure.
People loved what they were doing, but that honeymoon phase is over. And
that was going to happen no matter what, right?
Of course, that was definitely going to happen, no doubt. And AEW earned a lot of goodwill over the first few years, especially during the pandemic and being a different alternative to WWE, whatever else. But I think through some of the stuff with Punk and the Bucks and the fights and the backstage stuff and Jungle Boy, all this stuff, this hurt some of that goodwill. And I feel like that probably detoured some people from their support of the company at the end of the day. I mean, that's my honest take on it.
You said there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
Does any
what
of
do
that...
I mean by that?
Please.
Would you like me to explain?
Please.
I mean, Will Ospreay, who is incredible, one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. You have Will Ospreay show up. Boom, it's a big deal. I feel like that is something that should have just been talked about for 4 to 6 weeks. Directly after that, Okada, boom. Okada's a big star. Still, a lot of the people here in America are probably familiarizing themselves with him, obviously, especially a more casual fan. If you understand kind of my idea of the AEW casual fan, people in America that might not follow New Japan Pro Wrestling. So he shows up the next week, and I feel like that should have been a big deal. That for 4 to 6 weeks, we should have really highlighted him. That should have been what everybody was talking about. The week after that, boom, Mercedes Moné shows up. And that could have been another big deal for 4 to 6 weeks. That's what I'm saying. When a lot is going on, you have jammed a lot of stuff on the program and into the viewer's eyes. And I feel like these events could have been longer and taken more time to develop and really highlight how big of a deal it is to get this huge superstar to AEW. And whenever I say there's a lot going on, I feel like that's what I mean when I'm saying there's a lot going on.
Well, so there's 2 elements of that. This is a great conversation, by the way. There's 2 elements to that. Number one, I think it goes back to my point of having to meet all of these needs of programming and having to fill all that time. So we got to load it. Let's bring as many big names as we can to fulfill those needs. That, I think, is number one, my opinion. Number two, I think the absolute creative peak and creative high moment, like I would argue the greatest moment in AEW history maybe, was All Out 2021 when Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson debuted, and the subsequent weeks that followed when you got Omega versus Danielson at the first Grand Slam show, like that moment.
We also followed up on both of them for 4 to 6 weeks afterwards. You know what I mean?
Right, for sure. But so my point is bringing those names in, and then that was shortly after Punk too. I think that gave the impression to a lot of people within AEW, okay, like if we create the buzz like this, like what we did with them, we can do that again here and get that buzz. Because man, when that happened, I mean, it felt like the biggest thing in wrestling going on when those three guys all came in at the same time.
That was a huge move, and that was kudos to Tony Khan for doing that night. That was great. You know, that's Brody and I. We're always going to be a double debut that night, but for him to pull out the whole thing, you know, when he did the whole thing with Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole, that was great.
Yeah. So, you know, like I think people look at that, including Tony. I mean, Tony has spoken about that moment on multiple occasions to this day about how transformative he felt that moment was for the company. And I was there. You were there. It was massive. It was one of the greatest pro wrestling pay-per-views I've ever been to. So when you see those three debuts recently with Okada, Monet, and Ospreay, it's almost like trying to harness that energy again. And it created some buzz. But I think what you're arguing here, pacing it out, allows for the audience to digest it a little more. And I think the borderline word that I would use that has maybe led to some of the audience turning on AEW is the word saturation. You know, the content being saturated, the individual stars being saturated. And that in turn, Matt, leads to what I believe is bad faith claim. And I've said this on the record that I believe is a bad faith claim, even though Tony Khan didn't agree with me, that AEW doesn't have storytelling. Then when people make those claims, there's no stories being told. It's only matches. I think they put that hand in hand with the idea that the talent is so saturated and you just get matches and matches and matches. Whereas I don't believe that that's the case. And that's, to me, why some of the public sentiment has turned.
Okay. I just feel like even the buzz that they were working on creating when you had Ospreay, you had Okada, you had Mercedes back to back to back. I feel like Ospreay now gets caught in the Okada avalanche.
Sure.
People are still they're still gonna love him, they're still gonna deal him, but I feel like it takes a little bit of the importance off of him. It takes a little bit of the spotlight off of him. And then once you do Mercedes after that, it does the same thing to Okada and a little more on Ospreay. You know, it's just like I feel like we could have those guys they just could be they're such great, huge, big stars. And I feel like when you see them show up on the TV, the next 4 weeks of your programming, they need to be one of the focal points and nothing else new, because they are the new deal that you are promoting, you're putting on the map, and you need to make them seem as important as they could possibly be. And I understand that mindset where they're like, oh my God, we got to get them buzzing this week. Got to get them buzzing this week. We got to get people talking again this week, you know, but also it's just that also isn't sustainable. I mean, what you're going to have to get people talking with is your whatever story or this arc you have, this character on this journey, you have these characters on, and then eventually once they get to that big match that is the blow off or the finale of their deal, then they go out and they like tear the house down and have a great match. I feel like that is what has to be done, because that is sustainable. Bringing someone in, you know, every single week, you know, to like, you know, make the people tune in, make the people tune in, make the people tune in. I don't think that's sustainable.
Yeah. But again, and we had this whole conversation on our Is Kayfabe Dead episode about like storytelling methods here. So I don't want to get too much into it, but one of the things I do greatly appreciate about AEW, in my opinion, as a consumer, is that it has definitely opened up a wider audience to how stories can be constructed differently. They don't all have to be done the same way. Like you can use a match to start a story. Whereas conventionally, it was always just like, oh, I have an issue with you. You have an issue with me. Let's talk for 3 weeks and then have a blow-off match. There are other methods of storytelling that can be utilized. You know, I've been a huge fan of how they introduced Mariah May as a character, where so many people, I don't know who she is. I need vignettes. Well, they chose a different route to introduce her, and she's gone over as one of the more popular women on the program
now. I like it. I think it's been great. I think she's been great.
So there is innovation there, and there is open-mindedness to how a story can be presented with these individuals. One other element I want to hit on, I don't really want to get into ratings because I don't really put too much stock in viewership and ratings, honestly, in this
Same.
time in the TV spectrum. Cable is down across the board. And I know people like, I saw someone recently pointed out to me that like the Collision episode that aired after WrestleMania was at 200,000 people at the end of the show. It was also 2 a.m. So like I don't put a lot of stock in that stuff, but I do want to talk about attendance with you, because coming out of the pandemic and prior to the pandemic, AEW is doing really big shows. I mean, it was very easy for AEW to put 6, 7, 8,000 people in a venue, if not more. And in the past year and a half, we've seen attendance go down quite a bit. It's more or less 2 to 3,000, maybe 4,000 for an event. I have my thoughts on this, but what do you attribute that to ultimately, and how do you buck that trend?
I mean, I still think too, as far as like filling up the bill, I think that's, you have to appeal to more casual fans. I mean, I understand your mindset, John, of like where, you know, AEW is built on the context of having great matches and having 5-star matches and bangers and whatever else. And it's a place that's very wrestling heavy. If you love wrestling, we're the best wrestle. You know, they're even using that as a catchphrase, and I'm okay with that. But I still also think there has to be people that are just casual wrestling fans that are like trained in the way they thought, like, oh, well, this guy's a big star. I'd like to see him perform. I would like to see him wrestle. I'd like to see her wrestle. I'd like to see this. I'd like to see that. And I feel like that would be beneficial. I feel like sometimes AEW plays and caters to too much of a niche audience sometimes. And I think they just need to broaden who they play to sometimes. And I mean, that would be the only thing that and the fact that, you know, they lost some of their goodwill after, you know, they had all this great goodwill, you know, the first few years.
See, I have a little bit of a different mentality with this. I think one of the biggest reasons that attendance cooled down is because AEW was the new toy for a long time. And by the virtue of it, when you're hitting the same market for the 5th time in a year and a half or 2 years, the demand's just not going to be there. Like basic business tells you that, right? Like especially when the audience has seen it, and you're there so many times in a short period of time, it's not going to naturally be as must see as it once was going to be. Let's not forget, Matt, 2019, you're there in WWE. WWE was struggling horribly with attendance at that time. And it was a legitimate concern for the company where, I mean, Sean Ross Sapp and I started the bit online that people didn't understand was the bit, but like everything was tarped off, right? Like that was a common thing that we saw. I think the new toy factor, the new car factor, whatever you want to call it, wearing off. I think you could attest this. I'd actually like to ask you about this. Local promotion with AEW, like doing local media, doing local promo the week of the show. I feel like that is not anywhere in the realm of what it could possibly be. I'm sure you over the years have done a ton of local media promoting WWE events. Did you experience a lot of that with AEW?
I did some. I remember we did the Charleston, South Carolina show. It was when, I'm trying to think who Jeff ended up wrestling there. Gosh, I can't even remember. I wasn't out there, but I didn't end up going to ringside. But I did promotion on Tuesday. I did a ton of promotion on Tuesday and also some promotion Wednesday as well. And everybody said, "Oh my God, you're gonna be this here?" See, yeah, I'm gonna be there. My brother and I, you know, we'll do this, and I'm sure I'll be appearing and this, that, and the other thing. And then I wasn't even on the show, which I made sure to, you know, point that out to people. Like, I feel like if you have someone promoting the show, especially doing a dozen appearances or whatever, you know, trying to get people in, then like if someone sees you and they happen to recognize you, you should probably be on the show. Even at a bare minimum, like be a dark match at the end of the night or whatever else. So that was something that was a little frustrating, but I still feel like AEW has grown so big. There's still a lot of wires that get crossed. It has grown so fast and it's grown so big. I feel like there's still so few people doing things. I mean, it doesn't have the infrastructure that a WWE has, obviously, you know, and I think that's one of those things. Like, I remember even telling Adam Hopkins, like, "Hey man, I did all this promotion and like wasn't on the show." And I kind of feel like a dick when I tell people, "Yeah, I'm going to be there tomorrow. I'll be wrestling. So come check it out. It's going to be great." and I wish I had have been there, in some capacity. So yeah, I have done that with AEW. Usually if myself and Jeff, since we've been there, if they need someone to do promotion, I'm the one that gets the call. So I do several little interviews, this, that, and the other thing, ticket on sales, or come to Pittsburgh, come to Peoria, wherever it may be. My and Jericho, our go-to town, Peoria, Illinois. But yes, I have done that, and I do think that is something that is beneficial. They've started doing that more, and I think they're doing a better job with it also now currently.
And I want to say this too, like, this is not a dunk on AEW thing. This is all very honest assessments and whatnot. I think it's so important to keep it to context here. Two things. Number one, like you just said, AEW is still a relatively young company at the end of the day that has grown so quickly, and to even be in the conversation of being the number 2 brand in wrestling is a huge accomplishment in and of itself in such a short period of time. Think about how long it takes for companies to get to that higher level of recognition after being around for years. So it's massively important to keep that into context. And then on the attendance front too, like, let's say even it's a bad attendance night, 2,500 fans, whatever it is, 3,000 fans. How many other wrestling companies in the world are putting 2,500, 3,000 fans consistently in the seats these days other than WWE?
I mean, they're not. And it's one of those things. AEW is paramount to the health and success of the pro wrestling industry. And if you're one of those people online that is, an AEW hater who wants AEW to fail, you want them to go out of business, you love to post the pictures of their low attendances, you love to just dunk on them all the time, like you're not helping. It's that you aren't a pro wrestling fan if that is what you are doing or that is what you believe in, because AEW makes pro wrestling better. It allows people who might not be at WWE to have another option, a place they could go to. And Tony Khan fucking loves wrestling, and he's very passionate about it, and he is doing the best he can with what he has to work with, and you can never blame him for not being passionate or for not trying, because he is always trying. Is he perfect? No, of course not. And during the course of this episode, you said, this is not a slam dunk on AEW. No, not at all. I mean, it's an honest conversation, and I think it's things that are out there. And still, at the end of the day, they're always doing a great number of viewers on TV. They're in the top 5 shows every single night. Once again, even if they don't sell out an arena, there are more tickets in that arena than you're going to see at any other wrestling company, sans WWE. So they're still a success, and they have this huge roster. They put out these kick-ass matches, and they change the industry. They will go down in the books saying that they changed the course of history by starting AEW and starting this whole movement right now. Just don't hate on AEW. Don't hate on WWE. Don't hate on anything. Like, the people on social media are the absolute worst. The people that go on there just to troll people, to hate on people, to just disrespect people, just let people live their lives. Worry about what you have going on in your life. I'm sure it is much more important than it is trying to slam dunk on AEW or WWE or wherever the fuck you're trying to slam dunk on. But worry about your own self.
Yeah. And listen, this is a huge period of time for AEW right now where it's trying to get this new TV rights deal. The exclusive negotiating window is closing, but if AEW can, because this is my thought, not reporting something. This is me just saying this with a little added intuition from speaking to people and trying to get a feel for it. I really think part of a potential new TV deal for AEW with Warner Bros. Discovery would be getting Dynamite streamed on Max simultaneously as it is on TV. And if that happens, with how, I mean, Max is up plus 0.1 in growth rather from a year ago. Streaming is up overall. Cable is down. If that happens, that changes the dynamic of the way that you consume a major television program by having it accessible on a streaming service. And that's going to come with a big rights increase as well. So the people who are claiming doom and gloom here, I think it is just A, unnecessary, and B, off put and out of bounds. But
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be a doom and gloom. They're going to re-sign. They're going to have TV coming up. I mean, they do too good of numbers not to. You know, it is a sought after product, and people watch it, and it's still extremely popular, right? It, as you said, it's been around for a while. Maybe some of the shiny new toy elements have rubbed off. Maybe, you know, there's been a couple things that, you know, maybe they can work on going forward to build up more goodwill towards fans or whatever. But like AEW is going to be around, and that's a good thing. That's a positive thing, and everybody should be cheering that on, and they should be celebrating that AEW is here and is going to be around.
Now that you've seen the footage, should they have aired the Punk Perry footage?
I was I wasn't crazy about the footage and just kind of how they utilize it. I mean, I get the intent, I guess, but like I would have stayed away from it. And if I was in charge of AEW and making decisions, I would leave CM Punk in the past where he was, and I wouldn't reference him at all going forward. CM Punk is not at AEW. He's somewhere else. I would not reference him at all going forward, and I would focus on AEW and who is currently at AEW.
I guess we'll truly see the impact of it whenever Jack Perry returns to TV and what the reactions to him are. And you know, how he comes out. He was at Windy City Riot and he had a hell of a reaction. I was in Chicago, so you know, maybe it is some genius creative strategy that ends up getting Jack Perry over to a whole new level. I don't know. You know,
I mean, I do think at the end of the day, Jack Perry is going to end up coming out bigger and better when this is all said and done. I really do believe that. So I think too, like he's like motivated and he's angry. You know, he went through some shit, you know what I mean? And just I think he's going to end up coming out bigger and better when this is all said and done.
I guess we will see, but this is a good conversation, Matt. Really enjoyed it. Anything else you want to say on the AEW front?
No, I mean, besides, as I've said many times before, like I love AEW. I've loved all my time there, and nothing is going to change about that. You know, I want to, if I can be a part of AEW and I can contribute to try and help make things better and try and help build the future, that is, you know, that is what I would want to do there. So with that still, you know, with that being said, you know, I'm obviously still in the midst of negotiating and figuring out what I'm doing, but like, I do like it, especially because of the schedule and allows me the most time at home with my family. So that is a big, big plus.
Certainly. So we'd love for you to hop on board with the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. You can join us at advertisewithhardy.com. Get your business out in front of thousands and thousands of viewers and listeners every single week on one of pro wrestling's most insightful and enlightening podcasts. AdvertiseWithHardy.com gets you to be part of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy family. We'd love to have you here. I'd also like to encourage people to head on over to boxofgimmicks.com. You see this if you're watching on YouTube, the Matt Hardy brand YouTube, the spoken Matt Hardy t-shirt that I'm wearing right now. Put that on your back. I know Matt always pops when he sees a Matt Fact, Matt Fiction or an Extreme Life of Matt Hardy t-shirt at his signings. I feel like those people get a little extra time, don't they?
They do. Yes, they do. They get a little bit more of a conversation. I am sure of it.
Yeah. So boxofgimmicks.com is going to be your place to do that. It's going to be another fun week here as we trudge towards May in the pro wrestling spectrum. Anything else you'd like to tell the Extreme Life faithful, Matt Hardy?
No. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. Anything can happen in the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Federation, absolutely. For sure. Oh, goodness gracious. The words have been spoken. We'll see you next time right here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Delete!